So the road to UFC semi-finals for the 2024 season have been confirmed now to be taking place in Las Vegas, and the date is going to be on the 23rd of August, starting at 9 p.m. Eastern Time, and then the second episode and the second round of fights will be taking place at 11 p.m. Eastern Time. If you are unfamiliar with Road to UFC, it is a tournament which the fighters do take place in an 8-person tournament, and to win the whole tournament you have to win 3 fights. Starts with a round of 8, then goes down to a round of 4, and then into the finals. You probably have seen finals before because they do take place on Apex cards, and very recently Li Ho Chang versus Xiao Long was a finals fight that was delayed quite a lot. But we do have, in my opinion, a very stacked sort of tournament here. The first round has already taken place. These are the semi-finals. The winners of these fights will then get to fight for the UFC contract in the finals. Starting off the card is a bonus fight, a fight that is actually not part of the tournament, but pretty much you can think of it as a contender series matchup, where Yan Shi is going to be fighting against Danny McCormack in what is somewhat of an interesting move for McCormack, in my opinion, because she has been fighting at strawweight recently, and now she's going to be moving up a weight class to flyweight to meet Yan Shi, who I do understand is a very small flyweight, but she's quite big for 5'3", if that makes sense. She has been wrestling for her whole life, for my knowledge. That's how she fights. She trains at the UFC PI in Shanghai, which is where a lot of these fighters from China have been making rapid improvements in their game. I just looked to Zhu Kangxie, who has just looked amazing recently, which is not quite what I saw when I was looking at his fights that were a little bit older. But Yan Shuhei is going to be fighting Danny McCormack. I do think that Yan is just going to be able to find that success using that wrestling. She did have a good performance against Karine Silva, which has aged very well. You could argue that she may have even potentially won the first round before losing in the second. But she has fought, been somewhat inactive and then come back. I am quite happy to see Yan Shuhei quite active now, but I think that she is going to be able to out-wrestle Danny McCormack here. I think it's an interesting move up a weight class against a pretty tough matchup against a flyweight. Now we can move on to Feng Xiaokan fighting Miki Matono in a rematch. Now, Miki Matono versus Feng Xiaokan actually fought somewhat recently. It wasn't actually that long ago, only 8 months ago. And, of course, Feng Xiaokan did end up winning that matchup. And Miki Matono, you can see that she's coming off a loss to Feng Xiaokan, and that is because she didn't have to fight in the first round. Her opponent missed weight, and if her opponent made weight, then they would have had to fight. But since she missed weight, then they just didn't fight, and she just moves on to the next round in the tournament. The way that the first fight did go, and you can actually find this if you do go to Feng Xiaokan's page and you type in her name in Mandarin or traditional Chinese tier, you can find the fight against Miki Matono, and you can see that there is a massive size difference. There was a massive size difference in Feng Shuakan's original fight against Karan Singh in the first round, and I think we're going to see the same. Miki Matono did actually find some success in that matchup with her wrestling and with her control, but ultimately there is a big size difference here. Feng Shuakan, I do feel like probably could have finished the fight against Karan Singh a lot earlier, even though she finished it in 2 minutes anyway. Yeah, I think that the size difference and the difference in striking is going to be pretty significant here, so I do like Feng Shuakan to keep the fight on the feet and then find some success on the feet. And now a very interesting one, because Dong Huashang was actually my pick to win the whole tournament, and I do have to be honest and say that I was very unimpressed by her performance in round number 1, whereas with, I feel like Ximing found some success in her own right. She did take on Ye Damxiu, and it was a pretty close fight. Ye Damxiu is a very scrappy grappler, but Ximing was able to get it done. Dong Huashang, there's a lot of hype on her, man, because she does have a wrestling background. She has trained at the UFC PI in Shanghai, to my knowledge, since she was a teenager. She's 26 now, so she has spent years. Well, maybe not, because I think the PI is not that old, but there are very old videos that you can find on YouTube, and just by searching up her name, of her at the PI at a very young age, like a very young age, and so I had very high expectations for her, although on tape she didn't really impress me all that much, but she hadn't really been fighting all that often. I know that she's got a wrestling background, and then we saw a lot of striking in her fight against Priya Sharma, but I just, wasn't that sold on her. I didn't think that she had a very good performance. Now, Ming Shui did she have a good performance against Yade MCO? Somewhat. She's got a lot more experience as well, but I think that this one is going to come down to Dong Hwa Shang being able to find the takedowns, but I'm not too sure if this plays out how I think it is, if she can beat Feng Shuo Khan. I think Feng Shuo Khan might actually be a very good favourite to win the whole tournament. But I'm going to go with Dong Hwa Shang. She does have very talented wrestling, but I do kind of worry a little bit about that performance in the first round. And we can move on to the next one, which is going to be Ruel Penales, who was another fighter that didn't need to fight in the first round because his opponent missed weight, fighting against Kirusin Sahota. And although Kirusin Sahota had a very close competitive decision against Yin Shui, I think he's going to be able to beat Ruel Penales kind of easily. Ruel Penales, I will say this, is a very good striker. Like, he just is a very, very talented striker, and he's very good at kicks. That's kind of like his main thing. But he doesn't seem to know what he's doing when it comes down to the wrestling. You know, he's been out-wrestled in a couple of his worst performances, I guess you could say. And then I think even against this one here against Magomed Gazimuradov, who was 1-2 at the time, and I don't think has won a fight since, he was also getting out-wrestled, and Kirusin Sahota has a massive size advantage here. Kirusin Sahota is a decent striker, but if I was him, and if I was his team, I wouldn't bother striking with Penales whatsoever. I would just kind of go to wrestle and grapple. And if he does that, I think he finds a submission. So I'm going to pick Kirusin Sahota to win this one by submission. And now the next one is going to be Dong Hoon Choi. No, I think it's Dong Hoon Shui. Sorry, against Angad Bisht here. Close fight. I was very impressed by Shui's by his tape. You know, against this guy called Noriyuki Wada, he did have to deal with a lot of adversity, and he did end up getting a very impressive win. No, I think that was the wrong one. I think that one he won it in like 20 seconds, 5 seconds into the second round. But then against Kenta Kubo, this fight here, he had to deal with adversity and was able to pull it out. And he did the same thing against Junior Shuei. Now, he did win that fight, in my opinion. I thought he did more damage, and that's what it came down to. And although it is a bit sad to see Junior Shuei lose, because I am a fan of him, I would like to see him in the UFC as well, I did think that Choi did do enough, and he is a very good striker, and in this matchup, he is the better striker. I have very little to doubt about that in this one, but Angar Bisht is a very talented grappler. We did see that in his matchup against John Dave Almanza, and to be fair, John Dave Almanza isn't a flyweight. This guy is a men's strawweight for sure, and we did see Angad Bisht look pretty good. Now, Bisht, I will admit, did eat some pretty big shots on the feet from Almanza, which he probably shouldn't have. He did catch himself kind of swinging a little bit too heavy at moments. I understand the fight didn't last that long, but I am nitpicking a little bit because Dong Hoon Choi can knock him out. That's kind of the big problem that he's going to have to deal with here. But I do think that Bisht's wrestling and grappling should be good enough to take down Choi. I like Choi a lot as a prospect. I actually think that if he beats Bisht, he probably wins the whole thing. But I'm going to go with Angad Bisht here. We've seen Bisht go for long, hard rounds before, long, hard fights before for multiple rounds and championship fights, fight for Matrix FC. And I think that he's going to be able to pull one out here against Dong Hoon Choi, but he is going to need to wrestle and grapple to do it. If he just decides to strike with Choi, he's probably going to get knocked out, let's be honest. But we can move on. Bisht is the pick by submission. Okay, Jiu-Jitsu, Su Young Yu versus Daemisi Zawupasi. I think I might have heavily underrated Su Young Yu. I do understand, to my knowledge, I think Sean Bitter actually predicted him to win the entire tournament, and I'll put my hand up and say I actually picked him to lose to Shohei Noze. And I did learn a lot in that matchup, and my breakdown wasn't really incorrect, necessarily. Shohei Noze, the reason why I picked him is because he only has grappling. But his grappling, his pure grappling, is so lights out, I thought that another grappler in Su Young Yu, who's going to want to take the fight down to the ground, is going to get caught in something, like Xiao Long did against Shohei Noze in multiple opportunities there. But that was the problem. Shohei Noze only has grappling, he's got nothing else. And although he did look good in moments, for the most part, Su Young Yu did dominate the matchup. Then Daemisi Zawupasi is another fighter that I was very high on, and obviously I did pick him to beat Ren Ozaki. I thought he also had a pretty poor performance as well, in my opinion. Now, Daemisi Zawupasi, I think he kind of fights like Khamzat Chimaev, except at bantamweight, and he's from China, but He does. He does wrestle a lot. He's a big time chain wrestler. He does just fight until he gasses out. That's literally all he does. Is he'll keep going, he'll keep moving forward. He's a pretty big bantamweight. But Reno Zaki, I have to say, although he is way smaller than Daiomisi, man, he looked good for the first round until he gassed out. That's the thing. Ozaki honestly showed some of the better movement that I've ever seen on the feet in MMA for a long time. Like the way that he moved, Daiomisi Zawapasi couldn't do anything. But then he slowed down and he gassed out, and then Zawapasi was able to land his strikes and then work in his grappling, which he didn't really do too much. But I think in this one here, we're going to see Su Yang win. You know, he's a very talented wrestler in his own right. I think that he is the better striker out of the two here. So I'm going to go with Su Yang. I think he does win this one by decision. Now, I did pick him to lose to Shohei Noze, though, but I think that we're going to see Su Yang go out there and get it done. Now a tough one, Tokitaka Nakanishi. I love Tokitaka Nakanishi, but now he's got a tough one against Belgian Jiniusili. Sorry, his name used to be spelt different, so I think the translation was incorrect. Jiniusili Belgin. He's good because he actually lost to Shuya Kamakubo, who ended up losing in the semi-finals actually. But Shuya Kamakubo, big time one championship fighter, decent fighter, and Juniusili did look good in that matchup. And then he won against Xavier Alaoui, and I believe Xavier Alaoui is now signed to PFL under PFL Mina. He won again against a losing record, but he did beat Li Yunfeng the way that he was meant to. Li Yunfeng kind of was a bit of a gimme for him. It was a short notice matchup. He wasn't very good. That's kind of what happened. But Tokitaka Nakanishi, man, I love this guy's name. I said actually that I think he should be on the Contender Series this year. Didn't actually know at the time that he was on the road to UFC tournament. And he did beat Kyu Sung Kim, who is just a very tall, height merchant striker. For the most part, Nakanishi was able to get it done, kind of mixing in everything. I think it's going to be a bit of a wrestler versus wrestler matchup in this fight. And I'm going to pick Juniusili against my boy Tokitaka, but I do think that I've been impressed enough with Juniusili to pick him. I think his win over Xavier Alaoui is impressive. I do rate it, and he did look very dominant in that matchup against Yunfeng Li Yunfeng. So yeah, I do like Juniusili in this one here, early lean. And now, Jibin fighting against Masuda Kawana. Once again, I actually picked against Masuda Kawana in his fight against Young Jae Song because I was very impressed by Young Jae Song's takedown defense and striking on the tape. And Masuda Kawana, I do understand that he is an international level wrestler. He has, if you guys didn't know, actually represented Japan internationally in wrestling. But if you watch his tape against Jae Hyuk Bang and against a couple of other opponents, he is actually kind of struggling to fully control those opponents. And that's why I just thought that maybe he couldn't fully control Ye Jung Song. And that didn't really happen, did it? Masuda Kawana ended up looking really good. It was a bit of a bloody war, but Kawana ended up coming out on top in a pretty close matchup, which he did get a lot of control time in. Shibin, I rate highly. I rate him probably too highly, maybe higher than anyone on the planet right now. He, in my opinion, well, he did lose to Zhong Yang Li. That's just a fact. But he, in my opinion, has a very, very good case to have beaten Olivier Morad and be in the UFC right now. And then he just lost to Zhong Yang Li in 36 seconds. Like, that's just sad. He beats Unger Hans in Indonesia in a minute or so. Comes back against Yubajili, and although I don't really rate Yubajili all that highly, he did manage to beat him pretty easily by decision. I like Shibin. Shibin is a very good striker and grappler, and I think that well-roundedness should be able to kind of help him beat Masuda Kawana in this fight. And the reason why is because Masuda Kawana beat Young Jae Song, but Young Jae Song had nothing for him on the ground, really. So that's why I do like Shibin in this matchup. And now we have the matchup of all fights, really. I mean, I feel like the winner of this fight might just win it all. That is Shin Haraguchi fighting against Zhu Kangxie in what I will say is probably the biggest misread of all time by me. Honestly, I did not think that Zhu Kangxue was very good at all. Now, I did watch his tape. I did. And I looked into him. You search up this name. You watch the tape. It is very kind of a little bit hard to find for a lot of the fights. But in a lot of them, he didn't really look all that great, in my opinion. Fights that he was going the distance in, I had questions about. I did watch a couple of his losses where he wasn't looking all of that impressive. But then he goes out there against Tatsuya Ando, and all I can say after that performance is, Ilya Tapuria, count your days, mate, because Yu Kang Chue is on his way. My goodness, he looked good in that matchup. Now, Tatsuya Ando was fighting in the wrong weight class. I don't know how they managed to do this, but the team signed him up to the wrong weight class, so there was a massive size disadvantage in that matchup. But I think there's going to be a massive size disadvantage in this matchup, because Shin Haraguchi, I know he's a former lightweight, and he made it to the finals of the lightweight tournament last year. He's still small for 145 pounds. This guy is a bantamweight that was fighting at 155 last year. I don't understand really what's going on with Shin Haraguchi too much. And I also will say one thing as well. I think that until his striking improves, I think he's going to find himself in a lot of trouble in matchups like this, because Yu Kang Shui, man, he packs a lot of power and he's got very good technique on the feet. Now, we don't really know how good his takedown defense really is, but we're about to find out, really, aren't we, against Shin Haraguchi? Because if you guys don't know, Shin Haraguchi is I believe he's a world champion in under 21 freestyle wrestling, kind of like Rinya Nakamura is, and he does just have incredible freestyle wrestling. Like, when he does get control, he gets control. Now, I will admit, his fight against Yun Young Hong, boring. Very boring. Don't even bother watching it, it was boring. It was just Shin Haraguchi controlling him and doing no damage and just doing nothing. I don't think Shu Kang Chue is just going to let him, like, manhandle him like Hong did, you know? And I think that on the feet, there's going to be a massive discrepancy here, and I think that Shu Kang Chue, against my heart, you know, because I do like Shin Haraguchi a lot, and I picked him to win the whole tournament, is going to knock out Shin Haraguchi, man. I just think until his striking improves, we're not going to see him reach that UFC level potential that I know he has for a fact. But we just see him take damage on the feet, man. Like Rongju just paced him up. And then Yun Jong Hong kind of showcased a little bit of striking against Shin Haraguchi. So I just think that Shu Kang Chue, a guy that's going to be a lot more comfortable in there with him, a guy that also has the experience of 23 professional fights, is also something to talk about. I think that he's going to go out there and beat Shin Haraguchi in this matchup, and I do think we're going to see Yu Kang Chue in the finals against either one of these two, and that's a really good finals if it does happen. So, yeah, Shin Haraguchi, I rate him highly, but man, I just think that he needs to go to fighting nerds and work on his striking, I'll be honest. But yeah, with that being said, let me know what you think of Road to UFC, and I'll see you guys in the next one.